The land stretched wide and empty, covered in dust that never seemed to settle. The sun burned through the day, and when night came, the silence felt just as heavy. Out here, a man could go hours without hearing another voice. A lone cowboy moved through this place with steady hands and a closed heart. He worked, ate, and slept, then did it all again the next day. He didn't complain, and he didn't hope for much either. Life had taught him to keep going without expecting comfort. Still, something inside him felt worn down, like a rope pulled too tight for too long. On one quiet afternoon, he found himself standing where he normally wouldn't, faced with a choice that didn't make sense even to him. He believed he was only solving a problem on his ranch. He didn't know that this choice would force him to look at himself in a way he never had before. His days followed the same pattern. He woke before sunrise, fed the animals, checked the fences, and worked until his body ached. The ranch struggled, but it held together because he refused to let it fail. There was no one to share meals with, no one waiting for him at the end of the day. He had lost people long ago, and since then he had learned to keep his distance. Getting close only led to pain. He believed feelings slowed a man down and made life harder than it already was, so he pushed them aside and focused on work. He wasn't unkind. He paid his debts and did what was right. But inside, he felt empty, even when his hands were busy. He didn't call it loneliness. He just thought this was how life was meant to be. People in town had already decided who the girl was. They called her lazy and said she never worked, even when work was right in front of her. She often sat alone, her hands resting in her lap, her eyes fixed on the ground. There was no energy in her movements, no spark that drew attention. When people spoke, they spoke about her, not to her. She was treated like a problem to be moved along, not a person to be understood. The girl didn't argue or defend herself. She stayed quiet, as if she had learned that silence was safer. To most eyes, she looked careless and slow, but the cowboy noticed something else. He saw how empty she seemed, like someone who had stopped expecting anything from the world. It wasn't that she refused to work, it was that she didn't believe her effort would matter. That small difference stayed with him longer than he expected. The exchange happened quickly, without raised voices or long talks. Money passed from one hand to another, and that was all. There was no speech about doing the right thing, no promise of change. A few people nearby laughed under their breath, shaking their heads. They thought he had wasted his money on someone who would bring him nothing but trouble. The girl stood still, saying almost nothing, her face blank. The cowboy didn't explain himself to anyone. He didn't argue or defend his choice. He simply took responsibility for it and turned away. The moment felt awkward and heavy, as if something important had happened, but no one knew how to name it. Beneath the quiet, a line had been crossed, and neither of them could step back from it now. The first days on the ranch were quiet and tense. The girl did very little, and when she did move, it was slow and unsure. She avoided tasks whenever she could, stepping back when work needed to be done. The cowboy gave her simple jobs, clear and fair, but most of the time she failed to finish them. He never shouted, he never raised his hand or his voice. Instead, he fixed the problems himself after she walked away. The silence between them felt heavy, filling the house and the fields. At night, he wondered if he had made a mistake. The thought of sending her away crossed his mind more than once, but he never acted on it. As the days passed, he began to notice small details. She ate very little, even when food was set out. She slept lightly, waking at the smallest noise. When a tool dropped or a door slammed, her body jumped before her mind could catch up. These moments stayed with him. Slowly, the label others had placed on her started to feel wrong. Something deeper was holding her back, something that had nothing to do with effort or choice. Change did not arrive all at once. The cowboy kept working as he always had, fixing fences, tending animals, and keeping the ranch running. When things went wrong, he handled them himself without blame. One day, the girl finished a small task on her own. It wasn't perfect, but it was done. He thanked her, his voice calm and low. She looked at him, unsure, as if she didn't know how to respond. Kindness was new to her. After that, he began leaving food for her without comment, not asking if she had eaten. Some days she touched it, some days she didn't. He didn't press her. She started watching him work from a distance, quiet but focused. Little by little, trust began to form. It was slow and careful, but it was real. The truth about the girl came out slowly, in quiet moments that didn't feel planned. She never sat down to explain her life in one long talk. Instead, small pieces slipped out over time. She spoke about growing up without guidance, without anyone showing her how to work or why it mattered. She was often left alone, unnoticed, and told to stay out of the way. Trying had never brought praise, only blame, so she learned to stop trying at all. Doing nothing felt safer than failing again. There was no single person who ruined her life, no clear enemy to point to. It was a long stretch of being ignored that shaped her. As she shared these small truths, the cowboy listened without interrupting. What others had called laziness began to look more like fear and habit. Understanding this didn't fix everything, but it opened a door. For the first time, she felt seen, and that alone made a difference. As the girl began to open up, the cowboy found himself changing too. He grew more patient, giving time where he once gave orders. He started planning meals instead of eating in silence. He thought about the next day and even the months ahead, something he had never done before. He spoke more, but more importantly, he listened. In those quiet talks, he noticed how alone he had been for years. Work had kept him busy, but it had also kept him empty. Caring for her showed him that he wasn't really living, only getting through each day. Helping her learn how to stand on her own forced him to face his own life as well. In guiding her forward, he was learning the same lessons himself. The test came on a day that started like any other. Dark clouds rolled in faster than expected, and the wind picked up without warning. The cowboy was away from the ranch when the storm hit. Fences came loose, animals grew restless, and fear settled over the land. The girl stood alone, her heart pounding. For a moment, she froze. The old habit told her to stay still and wait for someone else to decide. Then she took a breath and moved. Her hands shook as she worked, and she made mistakes, but she didn't stop. She pulled animals to safety, tied what she could, and did her best to protect the ranch. When the cowboy returned, he saw the damage, but he also saw her standing there, tired and scared, yet still trying. He didn't focus on what was lost. He saw her effort, her courage, and he knew the change in her was real. After the storm passed, the ranch felt different. The cowboy understood something he hadn't before. He hadn't bought help. He had given someone a chance to matter, and in doing so, he had found meaning again. The girl moved with more confidence now. She stood straighter, met his eyes, and worked because she wanted to, not because she was told. That choice meant more than any task she completed. Looking at her, the cowboy saw how both of their lives had shifted. He had offered purpose, and in return, he had received one too. Life on the ranch settled into a steady rhythm. The work was still hard, and the days were still long, but the place felt warmer than before. There was less empty silence and more shared routine. Mornings began with simple plans. Evenings ended with quiet meals instead of lonely ones. The girl moved with purpose now, not rushing, but sure of her steps. The cowboy no longer carried the weight alone. They were not suddenly healed or saved from life's struggles. Some days were still difficult, but they were learning, growing, and becoming better than they had been. The ranch didn't change because of luck or success. It changed because two people chose to keep showing up, even when it wasn't easy. It's easy to judge people by what we see on the surface. Labels like lazy are simple, but they often hide a deeper truth. Many people aren't unwilling to try. They are just lost or afraid to fail again. Real change doesn't come from pressure or force. It grows when someone feels safe enough to take a step forward. Sometimes, helping another person stand on their own feet does more than lift them. It reminds you how to breathe again, how to feel alive. Small acts of care can change more than we expect.